Hello everyone, LeiLani Cauthen, CEO of Learning Counsel News Media and Research. I'm here today in Garland, which is just outside of Dallas, Texas, with some of the best people ever, maybe all the best people in the area. Although Dallas is really large, right? It's like larger than the LA basin, right? The Inland Empire, it's like, this is a massive area.
150,000 kids.
Yes, lots of children live here. And so I'm with two really, really smart people. I'm going to introduce you to them. The first is a woman I've known for a really long time, Rosa Hernandez, who is the Executive Director of School Leadership, Dallas ISD. Good to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor, a pleasure to always work with you.
Thank you. And Dr. Jason Adams, who's the Chief Academic Officer from Garland ISD, our hosting district.
All right, well, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you.
Great facilities.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, this is really a pretty space. We've enjoyed it a lot today. So I want to get started talking about sort of one of the major themes we've all talked about today quite a bit, which is that we're living in a moment where it's quite possible we're leaving the industrial age, but our schools have not. We're still manufacturing by age and by grade, and thou shalt keep up with your whole group or be doomed to a low grade. It's not working. What we found out, even especially during the pandemic, is that all humans are different and they learn differently. 50% of them curled up in a ball and basically learned nothing during the pandemic, right? The other 50% were like, this is awesome, I just want to keep this up, right? So we definitely have seen that we are, as humans, different. So I want to talk about model shift. Because, Rosa, I know you're going to tell me schools are working in many places. What is your idea of where we're going? And then I'll come to you, Jason.
Great questions. I think you're right. I think what COVID has taught us that some of it's working and some of it isn't. It's plainly as simple as that, right? Yeah. Some of us are really excited about getting online and can navigate that world very easily. They feel very safe in that space and they really didn't want to go back. And then others struggle through that space. They need interaction. They need that human teacher in front of them. They need that energy. They need that energy. Yeah. They might be like me. I need the people in the room. I need my peoples. I think as schools, we're faced with that reality. How do we blend it? How do we truly create an environment where both parties get to say, I feel comfortable in this space? And I think maybe we talked earlier about not having a box, right? The idea that we all have to work within this box of framework where it has to be one or the all, right? It has to be all online or all in person. What if there was no box? What if we could create a space for kids moving forward that really is meeting the 21st century, creating a space where, yes, I can go in person when I need to go in person, but then I can also authentically engage online in spaces and do global thinking, project-based learning, still aligned to our TEAC, still aligned to essential knowledge and skills, but in a safe space that's hybrid, that I can kind of do both worlds at once. How do we figure out that space together? And I think that's really the work moving forward, meshing our curriculum pieces and our accountability, working with our stakeholders and figuring out how do we bring both worlds in so that we're moving our students and we're not boxing them into, here's 6th grade, you've got to sit with these 30 kids, we've got to be on page 6 today, and we have to be on this TEAC today. How do we give them a real world problem to tackle and embed all those different TEACs and learning experiences? And so, I don't know if it's a simple yes or no answer.
Sounds like you have a really good plan. You got this figured out. That was well said. I just added on, I think, if anything, the pandemic forced us to kind of evaluate our gaps and where we're at. It forced a lot of changes in behavior, how we traditionally have done things. And I think from the teacher's perspective, we have these tools and this technology that allows us to individualize. It allows us to be more efficient. But with that, it requires a whole lot of new learning and not just repurposing tools to do things that we used to do. And so I think for us, the challenge has been making sure that we're introducing new tools and resources, but also at the same time providing the support and the training to be able to use them effectively. And so I think for us, it's starting to look more closely at blended learning models, personalized learning models, to really use the tool to allow kids to move further. Not that everybody has to be at the same place at the same time. And so I think those have always been part of good teaching practice. I think effective teachers figured out ways to do that, but I think the tools now give us so much more flexibility to be more efficient. And so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for students to self-study, to find things that are of interest, to connect to so many resources that we just never had 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so I think it's an exciting time in education. I think there's opportunities for us to get a lot of things right and get super efficient with the tools. But the challenge, or the flip side to that, is more technology isn't the answer. More applications isn't the answer. We have to be really intentional about what that looks like. And that's why I'm excited about this conversation today. Start talking about a little bit more about the frameworks and things like that. But we've seen in the last couple of years, we've seen more progress forward in the last probably 3 than I've seen in the last 10 or 15, just because it came out of necessity. And that excites me.
Well, thank you for that. Before I come back to you, little darling, I'm going to challenge you, Dr. Adams, on one thing that you just said, and that is, it might not be more technology, because one of the things we talked about today is the fact that you're not going to get the teachers. Through 2030, we're going to continue to see a massive shortage, at maybe at least 2030. You're going to have between 24 and 28% of all your classrooms empty, and that's going to continue and get worse and worse and worse and worse. So the human delivery mechanism is going to be hard. And so as soon as you say you got to train your teachers better, you're thinking that the teacher is the mechanism of distribution of the knowledge, right? And I'm just going to challenge you to consider, yes, we absolutely need humans, but maybe we can flip our distribution model in terms of actual individual learning pathways that are not bracketed by the teacher, or by your age, but by where you are. Just like blow up the paradigm of the manufacturing model, or even an online model, because it's still human, but you might be in 3rd grade in language and 6th grade in math. And so my time management of you just cut you off in math and gave you more language. Just blow it all up. Blow up the Carnegie unit. I know it's not legal yet, but just think with me now, right? Okay, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say that the teacher necessarily needs to be the instrument of knowledge. But I do think that you'll never be able to replace the teacher or the teaching element in a classroom.
I'm in agreement. I'm leveraging that human better.
Yeah, and that's what I would say the tools are for.
Okay.
And so one thing we've learned is just by adding 3 or 4 more software programs isn't the answer. It's teaching the teacher or the facilitator of this learning environment, or the discussion, this experience, or this journey with kids, is how to leverage the tools to be able to differentiate and individualize learning. And so I completely agree that the tool offers us a space to be able to push and challenge kids to places that maybe we haven't done consistently before.
Yeah.
But it also requires a different skill set and kind of a different lens to make sure that we're using the tool to encourage and produce learning at the level that we want to.
Yeah.
And so I think those are just some of the variables that I think that we'd have to keep in mind. It's never going to be the tool itself. It's always going to be the tool with a lot of intentionality around outcome. And I think we've seen some of our most success in our district, in our classrooms, where we have had kind of blended learning models where we're able to use technology to push kids further, and really getting kids to take ownership of learning because they have the tool, they have the resource, they know where they're going, and almost forge their own learning pathways based on their ability level, where they're at, and not holding kids back. And so I think that's the part that's exciting for me, but it also allows the teacher to push kids forward while they're still working with students that aren't quite there yet, to spend more time with them to get them there.
All right. As long as we're still talking about model, let's talk about how you're not your age and you're not what you've been assigned as an individual subject. You're an individual. Okay, so let's go beyond, Rosa, the box. Let's talk about the possibilities of the future if we really truly are not conditioned to be the grade, class, manufacturing motion that we've had in the past. But not all online, now with a bunch of chatbots, still human. What are the potentials there? Like, how big could that go? Like, if we could just blow up all of our laws and our hindrances, which choice is going to do to us, because we're going to be angry if everybody else has a choice but traditional public, right? How far could this really go? How broad should we blow up our minds? Rosie, you answer that first.
Wow, that's a very complex. So it's exciting and at the same time probably daunting. So I think we have to start thinking about the role of a teacher.
Yeah, what is a human teacher today?
So I think that's changing. I know when I was a student, a teacher was someone physically in the room, and I got direct instruction and rows, I'm thinking of that. But I think as educators, we have to kind of figure out what that teacher looks like in the 21st century now. Because for me, in my head, I'm thinking of the doctor system, right? Like, I took my kid to the doctor, and there's a nurse practitioner. What do they call them? A nurse practitioner, right?
Yeah.
And I rarely see the doctor unless my kid is really sick. Then I get like that tier 3 intervention, and then we get to see the real doctor, right? So we think about that concept, right? Where you have a highly skilled nurse practitioner, and then you have a doctor in that relationship. So take that back into the classroom, just for a thought, right? And I'm just playing with the idea.
No, I love this. I love this because we have a teacher shortage.
Right, we have a teacher shortage. I know we face a lot of that in many of our schools. So how do you duplicate? So we put the teacher, and you think, and this is just a scenario, you think of the teacher as the master teacher. And you have these new, maybe your DOI teachers, right? Your teachers who have never really taught, but we're hiring them because we need teachers in the building. Or they might have a set of skills that they bring, right? Either way. But they're not a master teacher. They don't have that pedagogy that you need. So then how can we pair with technology, pair with some kind of scaffolding system where I might give good tier 1 instruction through my technology, right? My kids may get that tier 1 instruction through whichever platform you want to use, right? They get that, everyone gets that tier 1. And then I use those master teachers to maybe go in and hone in on the tier 2, tier 3 kid.
Well, you've got generalists, but then you got like the podiatrist and the heart surgeon and blah,
that
blah,
might really go into
specialists,
like the scheduling
subject.
commercial the scheduling, right? We might schedule some kids, 12 kids who need some specialized phonics awareness, and they might go at 2:00 here, right? And we might pull them out. We might put them with that master teacher. That teacher went to school to be a teacher. That teacher who knows how to dissect whatever the phonic deficiency is, and we might give them that. And while everyone else might get a good dose of good tier 1 instruction, and then you might have some that might veer off on a project over here. So thinking, if we took away, again, we would have to work with our stakeholders, because when you think about choice, what I find, you just got to wrap your head around school choice. While I understand those who want it, public educators are going to tell you, sure, if you're going to do school choice, hold them to the same accountability that you're going to hold your public educators, right? Hold them to the same accountability you're going to ask TA to hold us in public schools. Then we could have a real conversation around school choice, right? My kids still have to do 4 hours in order to do attendance, right? When they come to school, in order for us to get funded for that child, they have to sit for X amount of hours. Take away that law and allow me to have my kid log in and I get still full funding, right? Then we can talk about being creative and thinking, remove the box that you're making me operate under, I guess. We have to remove the box for public education. Allow us to reach out to more kids in the various ways we know how to do that work without saying, well, you've got to do it within this parameter. It has to hit this CCMR. You have to hit these many seat time. You can't.
You gotta do all these
You
tests.
gotta do all these tests. Allow us to do global thinking. Allow us to do global project-based learning that truly is going to meet our global gaps and allow our kids to really engage in authentic experiences. But you have to let us think outside the box. You cannot ask us to work within that box and then
Yeah.
create something different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because that's like teaching you, that's like treating you like the stepchild, right? Like you just like, you don't have any rights and blah, blah,
You're
blah.
gonna get-
My kids are going to get all the good stuff.
You're going to get the
But
same
we're-
amount of money, but you're not going to be
Yeah,
held to the same
yeah.
accountability.
It's so not fair. It's so not fair. I'm just saying. Okay, but there is a good thing, and that is the challenge that just got thrown down because you're smart people, and you can still rise to the challenge, right? And I'm going to go back to this one thing that you were talking about earlier, and then I'm going to throw the mic over to Dr. Adams, and that is, you were talking about a future that felt like an adventure as you were describing it. It was like, wow, I'm going to be like the math super duper kid who crosses my math acumen with my biotechnology super duper underwater drone stuff, right? That's what I'm going to do.
We can make it happen.
And to make it happen, it's going to happen here in this facility for sure. But I mean, like it was so custom, right? But it was still intersecting with humans and some socialness with other little humans along my way. I mean, I see how AI is going to do this. I see it in my mind's eye. I know you do. Mm-hmm. So now we're challenging you over there, Dr. Huss.
Well, you were speaking my language. I could not wait to grab this microphone. Give me that microphone.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. First of all, well said. You talked about kind of this global learner and the future of education, and there's a lot in there. I mentioned PBL, 21st century learning, all of these things. And I think at the root of all that is human connectivity and interaction.
Yeah.
And so I think if we start talking about 21st century learning, and we're starting to talk about things like how do we collaborate, how are we communicating with one another, those are tough skills to teach. And especially in a world where we spend so much time behind screens.
Yeah.
And so I think that has to be discussed, because in a different world, in a different life before I'm in the job I'm in now, we spend a lot of time in PBL. We spend a lot of time in personalized learning. And the lesson that we learn, because we still live in this educational environment, we still have parameters and guidelines and standards and assessments.
Yeah.
And so those things, just the reality of what it is, where we are now. We may look different 10, 20 years from now.
But you're bracketed. You're fighting
Yes.
those brackets.
Yes.
But yes.
And so I think that the challenge is trying to create conditions where we know that these kids and the system needs to prepare students to go out and beyond, to be able to communicate,
Those
collaborate.
soft and hard skills.
Yes, and do all of those things that are required of the workforce today, yet in this world of accountability. And so I think that, you also talk about kind of the social mechanism of
Yes.
school and classrooms. And if you start removing age is a kind of a parameter for where we place kids, and we start looking at skill, now think about that. There's a lot of social benefit for kids being around same age peers.
Yes.
And so I think all of those things need to be thought out. And I've seen people that are so quick to jump into 21st century learning models without taking care of the foundational elements.
Yes.
And it doesn't go well. And so I think the
Yes.
lesson learned is we can't underemphasize or overstate the importance of teaching kids how to navigate this world through technology in an environment.
Responsibly.
Yes.
Responsibly.
Yes.
Yes.
So-
But I think we talked about that a lot earlier, so I'm going to
Yeah.
have you keep the mic. Actually, I'll have to take it so people can hear me. And then I'll hand it back to you. I think that post-pandemic, what you just said, Dr. Adams, and then it was coming to you, Rosa, that has to be done with more intentionality. I think socialization is a byproduct and done with very little intentionality of a physical school. What if we made it an intentional thing?
If we're able to make it an intentional thing, then we start producing students that can see someone else's perspective, that honors and values other people's, viewpoints and acknowledges them and lifts them up. I think if we can get a system where we can value and empathize with each other, and I think there's ways to do that. I think there's ways to do that around defining a role in learning platforms. I think there's ways to do that with the projects or the work that we put in front of kids. I just think that along that, we got to teach individual students the skills to be able to interact and do that well. And I think we also have to understand with how students interact in the digital world beyond school, day to day, and how they interact at school, we got to find balance between those two places and help them be responsible in both. Because we expect kids to come to schools and participate or interact in a certain way that's so different than how they interact beyond school. And I think we have to get closer to their worlds and their kind of social worlds and social life beyond school to be able to support it in.
I agree. You go, Rosa. What do you think? Intentionality.
I think Dr. Adams said it perfectly. It has to be intentional. We have to grapple with the fact that kids, they're two different worlds, and how do you blend both of them, right? How they act on their social media at home, how that carries very often to our classrooms, right? How many of us as educators are dealing with bullying, dealing with inappropriate comment, students committing suicide, right? Because they feel bullied. They're in this small little world, they think, and there's no way out because we haven't figured out how to close that gap, that social gap between I feel safe, but then at the same time it isn't safe, but then who do I tell? I mean, it gets really blurry, right? Between being mom, being educator, being teacher, being principal. And so I think being very intentional, while I love technology and I'm excited about the possibilities, we have to stop and make sure that human component is always there. There is no replacement for a teacher in my eyes. There is never going to be a time and space where we don't have a quality teacher leading that work. They are the foundation. And it's us educating that teacher and exposing them to different tools that can aid and guide the work so that they have those hard and soft skills, those technological skills, those digital skills to really operate. When you talk to managers in the real world, they want people who can be digital, yes, very hands-on, very detailed, can do that work, but they also want people who can talk to other people, who can lead other people, who can engage in true collaboration, who can sit in a room and problem solve something without killing each other in the room. Like, you've got to teach the soft skills with the hard skills and all the technical skills at the same time and create a space for those three pieces of learning. And then I think you'll nail it when you can do all three.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Perfectly.
But I also would say that the science of teaching people to be human is missing in many, many, many places. I'm just saying, it's missing because otherwise we wouldn't have the problems we have right now in society. It's a missing thing. Okay, so I want to wrap this up then with one other thing. Leading. What's different about leading? And we're going to do this all in it's a 2-minute round. So what's different about leading? Because we know it's different. Who wants to go first? Rosa? Rosa's picking on you, Dr. Adam.
I'm going to go with
First of all, love the question. Leadership matters, maybe now as much or more than maybe ever before. And so we spent a lot of work in this district over the last 2 years really discussing and defining what leadership is. And I think for us, we've gotten really narrow on what leadership looks like in Garland ISD. And so we spent months going down this journey together just to define it because we think it's that important. And what we've learned through that process is, even though that everybody may have had some different language to describe leadership, we all kind of pulled out these very important tenets, right? So this ability to grow, this ability to kind of inspire, to develop relationships, and those things are like this leadership. And so where we're going at with it now is really looking at leadership at different levels of our organization. And understanding that leadership in Garland is not relegated to a position or a title. We are all leaders.
Yes, a teacher is definitely a leader.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
And actually all the way down to kids, all the way down to students. And so one of the things I'm proud about, when we started this process, we got a bunch of high school students together and we asked them, what is your expectation of leadership in Garland ISD? What is leadership? And they were just so clear on what they thought leadership should look like and what it was. And so those are conversations that we're having now because, to me, leadership, if it was easy, everybody would do this. But it's more important now than ever is because there's a lot of tough decisions that are being made. There's a lot at stake right now, especially in public education. We've talked about choice. Well, in my opinion, I have very strong beliefs and opinions about what that means. And I think public education is the great equalizer in our society. It provides opportunities. And so I think in public ed, leadership is going to matter now. And what we do now, the decisions we make now, will be generational. And so I hope in 10, 20, 30 years from now, when we look back, we made the right decisions. And we created something that's sustainable and better than what it was 150, 200 years ago. And so that's kind of what drives our work here. Drives me personally. But I love the question. So
I agree with you, Dr. Adams. I hope that 100 years from now that we've built leaders that are going to be able to face the difficult challenges ahead. When I think about leadership, I think about making sure that everyone's clear about the investment that we're all engaged with, that we're invested in children, that we're invested in our community, that we're invested in moving forward in a way that we can all live with each other in this unity. While we don't all agree with everything that we're doing, while we may not agree with vouchers or we might be against or for, we can agree if we don't sit in the room and listen to each other and really listen and dissect that and find out the solutions. That's going to define us, I guess, that leadership, being in the room and being able to listen to each other, figuring out, okay, I hear your perspective. How about this perspective? And then where is the consensus? Where is that common ground? Because true leaders find the common ground, right? They find out the why behind whatever the situation is. We have to get back to our whys, why we lead, why we're inspired to do this work, why you run for presidency, why you run for congressman, why you run for city office, why you choose to be a teacher, right? Most of our whys are tied to kids being successful, right? And if we can figure out how to work with each other as humans, and we don't forget that we are human, right? And that we have feelings and how we speak to each other. And we know it's not what we say, it's how we say it to each other that drives the work. So I think just as leadership right now is going to be figuring out common ground. Where is that common ground where we can both meet in the middle and we can say, okay, we both agree we need X, Y, and Z. Now how do we get there? And I think that's going to be the key in how we define and how we engage with technology, how we engage with AI, what these classrooms are going to look like in 5-10 years, because they are changing. And we're going to either figure that out now, or we're going to figure out when we have lots of kids dropping out and leaving our public schools. And we can't do it by ourselves. We have to do it in partnership, and we have to figure out who are those stakeholders and how do we find middle ground to ensure all our kids are successful when they go out into the real world.
That was very well said. And Dr. Adams, that was very well said. Awesome. You're both super duper awesome. I'm dubbing you awesomeness galore. Well, this was really great. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you guys for being with me. And goodbye to Dallas and Texas. Thank you guys for having us.